Hey, I'm Sven Masterson, one of the co-founders and mentors in the Mentoring Men community. And I show men how to transform broken, painful, dying marriages into deeply connected, intimate, and passionate marriages. And in this video, I want to talk to you in some metaphors. Anybody who knows me, guys in my community know, I think in metaphors. I see metaphors everywhere. And I've been tinkering with this new thing in my shop, a knife sharpener, and it just brought to mind the Mentoring Men weekly meetings on Fridays. We call them Iron Sharpens Iron meetings. And I want to just kind of expound on that a little bit and use real sharpening to kind of explain what sharpening one another looks like. We throw this term around a lot of times. A lot of us don't know where it came from sometimes. And it's just useful to get a visual picture. I find that anyway as a man. So I'm in my shop. I have this Wicked Edge sharpener that I got off Amazon. It's the WE60. It's quite expensive, but I'm privileged to be an Amazon reviewer, and so I didn't have to pay for this. And so I get to try things like this and see how I like them and whatnot. And I'm really impressed with this company, first of all. As a guy that likes knives, a guy that likes knife sharpeners, I had a small issue, got in touch, really stellar customer service. I think the man's name was Jared, and he just really took care of me. So very pleased with this company. Anyway, that's an aside. That's not what this video is about. What is the point? What's sharpening all about? And what's mentoring all about? Well, I live on a homestead in the mountainous region of Pennsylvania, and we use tools a lot. We use things that need to be sharpened. And that can range from a pocket knife to a machete to lawnmower blades, scissors, pruners, all kinds of stuff. And so the first point I kind of want to make about this idea of sharpening is the need to be sharpened is just a natural byproduct of use. And so in a man's life, if you're going about life, you're going to get used. Like just day-to-day life is going to take off some edges. It's going to ding the blade. It's going to give you an opportunity to experience the need to be sharpened. And so one of the things we're persistently reminding one another in our mentoring community is it's not a shameful thing to need sharpening. It's not a shameful thing really to need really any kind of refinement. And so I wanted to visualize that a little bit today and show you kind of what that looks like on different angles. So I carry a pocket knife just because of the nature of where I live and what I do. And I just recently sharpened this, and so it's in pretty good shape. So when something has got a pretty clean edge, it's pretty sharp already, and you put it in a sharpener like this, it doesn't really need a significant amount. So I'm just going to put, this is called a depth gauge. I'll put that in there. Secure this real quick. And you probably can't see in great detail, but you see how the knife is pointing towards you, the camera. Now something really important, and again, metaphors. You got to clamp your sharpener to a workbench. And the reason for that is when you apply pressure, if you go about the honing or sharpening process and it's not secure, you'll hurt yourself. And this is actually another thing I find true as far as being a mentor, is that if I'm not secure as a man and I go trying to sharpen another man, it's not going to end well. I'm actually going to risk injuring myself. Now, what do I mean by injure? I mean causing myself maybe a shameful, embarrassing moment, or feeling emotionally challenged or difficult. And that would come from really trying to sharpen from an insecure place. And so I just clamped this sharpener to my workbench to make sure it can't move, right? Because we're going to put a little bit of mild pressure on it. But last thing I want is that knife coming back in my face. And so this is a message to you if you're in a mentoring community or in some sort of group, is it's awesome to be eager to sharpen another man, but make sure that you're secure before you go trying to sharpen another man. I don't mean perfect. I just mean make sure that you're solid in whatever the thing is you're about to do. Otherwise, you're risking, harm to the knife that you're trying to sharpen, but also harm to yourself. And so I just secured that knife, and it doesn't really need a tremendous amount of sharpening. So in sharpening, and then with the wicked edge sharpener, it came with a set of stones. These are diamond stones. They're 200 grit and 600 grit. Now, the lower the number, the more aggressive the grit is on a sharpener. And because this is actually doing pretty good already as a knife, these are both really too aggressive. And so I need to hone this knife, not really be aggressive with it. And sometimes that's true in a man's life. He comes and sees somebody like us, or he comes to our weekly community meetings and he says, I'm doing pretty good. I'm an 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I just, I got a little couple things that irritate me in my day-to-day life, and I'd like to get a little bit of guidance. I'd like to get some perspective from other brothers. And for those guys, we pull out a higher grit. And so this stone has an 800, I don't know if you can see that, and a 1000. Now this does not come with the WE60, by the way. I'm just mentioning that because if you're appreciating that part about this video, this doesn't come with that. But I happen to have a set, and so I'm going to put on these 800s to go on here, right? And I'm just going to do some equal strokes on the blade. Now, I apologize if you're a person that can't stand these kind of noises. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. And I'm just going to do some nice even strokes. Now, I've already preset this angle so that I didn't have to do it in this video. And plus, I sharpen my knife with this all the time. But I want to point out that when you're sharpening a knife, you need to understand what your goals are. And this is true with mentoring as well. What are you trying to accomplish with honing? And what is the right, not just grit for that sharpening, but what's the right angle? Now you might say, Sven, especially if you're not familiar with knife sharpening, what's the point with angle? Well, it works like this. If you have a really, really, really steep angle on a blade, it gets very sharp, but it's also very weak because there's less metal. Watch my hands. If my angle is really steep, it's very thin. And so it can be very sharp, but it's also very frail. And so you have to compromise when you're making something with a sharp edge by saying, well, exactly what is the sweet spot in the angle where I can maintain a sharp edge and it will not be frail. Now, when you have a shallow angle like this, you have a very durable edge when it comes to it's not frail at the metal level because you have maximum material in there. However, they dull very quickly. And so there's probably some metaphor significance to this too in a man's life. I would say the way I could see that in the world is there's a lot of men's work that is focused on externals, on being outwardly appearing to be some sort of machismo. I'm a badass. Look at me. You should envy me. You should be scared of me. My muscles are huge. My income is big, and I bed a lot of women. I would call that a really steep angle, which means in a man's life, it's a very aggressive edge. It's very sharp. But you know what? Feeble. It's really brittle. Those guys experience a couple knocks, and that sharp edge and all that machismo, gone. They turn out actually to be pretty disappointed because they find that there's no material, there's no substance in their edge as a man because they were all about being razor sharp without durability. Then you've got the typical nice guy. That's the guy that's so scared of his own masculinity that he has really no assertiveness, no attack. He wants to ensure he never gets hurt. He's very insecure. Actually, so is the other guy, by the way. And so their angle is got tons of material, and it'll probably never really truly break, but it also can't cut anything. It's not really good for average use. And so it might look okay, but it's not the knife you turn to when you need something done. And that's exactly, how that could be as well. So part of mentoring for us is helping a man find that sweet spot angle, helping him realize, hey, you've got a really badass razor sharp knife edge, but it's feeble, and helping the nice guys determine, hey, yeah, you've got a really safe edge and it's really durable. You're a really nice guy, but it's not working for you. You can't cut anything, right? And so in knife sharpening, what you do is you put your stone on like that, and you use a digital angle finder. Is probably the best way. Let me see if I can turn that on for you. And you place it on there, and you'll see, if you can see it, it tells me what angle it is. Now, I think I have these at 22.5 or so, something like that. I can't see in the reflection, but I use this to precisely hone in the angle, set my stones in there, and then it's all about reps. And this is true in a man's life too. You figure out what is the man needs. Does he need like seriously heavy grit, or does he just need some honing? And we'll talk about more of that in a second. And so then you just do the reps. And so sharpening iron in a man's life is really about applying the friction and adversity he needs, or what we would call challenge in men's work, and over reps. And the way knife sharpening works and the way reps with men work is you start with really the lowest grit needed. And so the more material you need to remove, the more you need to change the shape, you start with a lower number, which is why I'm not using these. This blade is pretty shaped. I don't really need to repair significant damage. I just need to refine or hone. So I'm going to start with these 800s, and I'm going to shape it. And then once the 800, I've done all I could do with 800 grit, I'm going to flip over to 1000 grits. And I'm going to just keep doing the reps. And this is true in a man's life too, right? Now, supposing I took this blade out, and again, I'm using it. It's going to get nicked. It's going to get dinged. It's going to get really heavily used. This happens all the time. Now, I have an example in kind of a machete from my property that we use because we've cleared a lot of land and whatnot. This blade is in rough shape. It's awful. I don't know if you can see this dip right here. That's where this blade probably met a rock or something very hard when we were clearing land. And this blade needs what's called a reprofiling. Now, if I sat here with these stones and tried to reprofile something like this, it would take forever. And so the first step in something like this is to draw out kind of what the new shape needs to be. And you have to remove a lot of material, and that's called reprofiling. That's when you create a new shape on the blade. You use a very aggressive, heavy approach. In this case, it would be an angle grinder, and you kind of rough out your basic shape. And then you come back and you resume with something like this. Now, just FYI, this sharpener is not appropriate for a blade of this size, but I wanted you to understand the principle of sometimes with heavy use, you need to be reprofiled because you get dinged up, you get beat up. And it doesn't mean that you lost all your functionality. It just means you need some attention. You need reprofiling. And so sometimes sharpening iron in a man's life is, whoa, brother, you need some reprofiling, not just a honing. You don't need the 800 and 1000 grit. You need something even more aggressive than 200 and 600 grit. You need the angle grinder, the bench grinder. And so that can be part of a man's life. Now, ideally, when a man is deeply connected with other men and he's going about his life, he really can be kind of focused on, these approaches, what you could do with a simple grinder. But sometimes you just do need the reprofiling. Now, in the Mentoring Men community, we have these kind of opportunities in different ways. For example, all of our members are entitled to come to our weekly Iron Sharpens Iron meetings. That's where we do a lot of this. And then for the men that really want to do a deep dive, these are the guys that are really getting beat up by the world, by their life. They're not sure about their shape anymore. They've taken some really hard knocks. These men are usually very, very successful in most areas of life. They're fathers, husbands. They've been married for decades. They've been doing their best. They have been faithful for the most part. And one day they come home and their wife says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or I need space. Or maybe they find evidence on a partner's cell phone that their wife is having some very inappropriate and very hurtful conversations with another man, right? These are the guys that need some reprofiling. And it's not because they've done something wrong. It's because somewhere in just all of the day-to-day use of life, man, they've just taken some hard knocks, and it's not working for them. They've lost their edge. They've lost their sharpness, and they don't want to turn into, Mr. Machismo, but they also don't want to keep being a nice guy. And so what do you do for them? Well, you need kind of the reprofiling. And so the way we do that in the Mentoring Men community is with a 4-part journey we call the Journey to Masculine Greatness. The most important and first part of that is called the Renewed Masculine Man, and that is a major reprofiling of a man's shape. It helps him to sort out really all of the dings he's taken since he was a kid, really. All of the ways his shape is not working for him, and we reprofile it. That takes 6 months, and it's a very, very thorough process. Men routinely tell us it's the most transformative thing they have ever done. And these are men that have been to other forms of counseling, therapy, marriage counseling, pastoral counseling, and is even something that mental health professionals use themselves. And so it's a very deep dive into getting back to the place where you can really handle most of life from there with just small, regular updates with more of like a honing and sharpening stage. And so that's when you are back in a place where it's working for you. But yeah, any man who's actually living a life is going to continue to need sharpening and honing. And so, like I said, we offer that in our community as well. Now, sometimes even in our community, and this is one of the reasons and inspirations for this video, a man can feel like, there's so many people in our community that need this. I feel out of place. And what I'd like to remind you is that if you're surrounded by a lot of people in your life, or if you're in our community and you notice a sudden uptick of men that are struggling and in pain and hurt, who are experiencing reprofiling, it doesn't mean that there's no place for you. You got to remember that iron sharpening iron has this wide spectrum from reprofiling to honing. You might be at a place where all you need today is 200 grit, 600 grit, 800 grit, 1,000, or I'll use some other metaphors here in a second, or differently. You might just need a few strokes and you're okay. And so you start with reprofiling, then you move to these kind of medium range stones, then you move all the way up to that 1,000 grit. And then what? Then what's next? Well, there's something called a strop. You might know this term. You can just use an old belt or piece of leather. And what that does is takes the burrs off from the sharpening process, which are common. And if you're super technical and you want to critique my knife sharpening, go ahead. I could use the advice. But it kind of helps just to kind of ultra refine the blade, and then you pop these things out and it's back to work. Back to your pocket, back to your use, etc. And so that's how we see the mentoring process. We don't have any judgment or critique for how a man comes into our community. To be honest, most of them come in because they need reprofiling. And then after a while, especially after they're there for 6 months to a year, they just need, a regular update or honing. And it's all part of the process. It also means that there's really, in our opinion, in a man's life, never really an opportunity where you should be going solo, where you should be around distant from honing and sharpening. That would be isolationism. And in our opinion and experience, when a man is isolated, he gets like this really fast, even if he hadn't been reprofiled in the past. If I go out and I really start beating on things and I'm not actually doing regular maintenance on this, it's going to look horrible really fast. That's what happened. This is actually from a period in my life where, to be authentic and direct, I was not stopping to take care of the tools. I was in hardcore land clearing mode with my sons, and I probably went through like 10 of these and just destroyed them. So I'm saying that because sometimes when people watch our stuff and we talk about self-reliance, they mistakenly believe we're talking about isolationism and being on your own and by yourself and not sharing your life with other men. And nothing could be further from the truth. We are a community fundamentally devoted to caring for one another, and in a way where we help men all the way from reprofiling to honing every single day. And that doesn't negate self-reliance. Self-reliance is basically how you use these tools once you're sharp. But every man needs to have other men in his life who are helping him on that journey. Now, I would say if you're watching this video and you're not connected to a community and you feel like you need reprofiling, it is also my own experience, which is why we created Mentoring Men, that it's very hard to get reprofiled by just hanging out with your buddies and talking about your fantasy football roster and your hobbies and hanging out and having a burger or a beer. That's really valuable time in a lot of ways, but it will almost never reprofile you because it takes intention, dedication, it takes discipline, it takes intention, it takes understanding and wisdom and a clear path. And what we offer the world is men a very clear, deliberate, and effective path to reprofiling themselves, and then a community that keeps them persistently and consistently and reliably sharp and honed. Now, I'm not saying all that to sell you on the Mentoring Men community. In fact, I only want some of the people that listen to this video to even explore that. Now, you might say, why? Well, because we want people with certain characteristics in our community. We want people that see themselves as high character, highly emotionally intelligent, men that have a tremendous amount of depth, men that take a high degree of self-responsibility and agency, and men that are not out in the world feeling sorry for themselves and victimized. Now, we have a lot of compassion and empathy, really, for any man, but what we're looking for is the man that is ready to own his life, and that starts with first realizing that he needs some reprofiling or sharpening or honing, and he's focused on himself. And so if you're watching this video and you need any of that stuff, I sure would love to connect with you. I would love it if you would reach out, and you have a couple options. One, you could set up a complimentary session with myself or one of the other mentors in my community where we actually explore, hey, what's going on for you? What do you need? What's happening in your life that we might be able to help you with? Those calls are, like I said, complimentary. There's no sales pitch. We just hear more about what's going on in your life, and it's a bit like a blade assessment. We'll help you to figure out what you need, and if we're the people to help you with that, and then send you on your way. Now, perhaps you already know, hey, I know I need honing and just kind of some regular updates. Well, you'll find a link in the description for that too. That's just about joining the Mentoring Men community. That community per year costs less than this Sharpener. It's $25 a month. It's ridiculously valuable for what that price is. There's 20 or so live Zoom sessions among the community per month. They're deeply connecting, engaging. They're very powerful in men's life. Our members love each other. There's no judgment. There is a deep level of acceptance and high regard for one another. And we hear all the time how much people love that. In fact, 98.6% of people who come stay. So we know we're doing something right. Lastly, if you know, hey, I really need some reprofiling, then I would invite you to explore another link about the Renewed Masculine Man program. And I I'm just going to say it on video so that you're not left wondering, oh, that sounds really expensive. It's $1,500 over 6 months, and it's a lifetime participation, meaning once you have paid that commitment, as long as you're a Mentoring Men member, you can go through it 100 times. You can keep coming to the meetings. You can keep going through the curriculum, which we continue to update all the time. That is like a hybrid program, meaning that is done in a community, small group setting with professional mentors like myself and several other mentors who are showing up weekly and having small group connecting meetings with one another, where we still get to know those men. They get a lot of the one-on-one experience that you might want or love in the world, but in a smaller group, which makes that much more approachable, much more affordable. Again, people have told us most transformative thing they've ever done, and we know confidently that it's effective. Lastly, and we're not going to talk about this here, but if that's still not enough and you want like ultra VIP care, well, we can offer all of you that with one-on-one guidance from one of our founders or one of our other mentors. And we love doing that too, but to be honest, we find that for most men, that reprofiling we do in the Renewed Masculine Man, the $1,500 option, which is $250 a month roughly for 6 months, that does it. That's what they need. And once they do that, if they stay connected, all they need is this kind of sharpening. Now, having said that, I appreciate you watching the video this long. I know these kind of videos can go for a while and whatnot. And I told you about this Wicked Edge sharpener. Pretty cool stuff. I really like it. I really like the company. And as much as I like it and I like the company, I would also like to give this away. And so here's my offer for you. If you do one of those things, you join any one of those between now and, let's see, what's today? The end of August. So let's just say September 1st. If you end up signing up for Mentoring Men, or you sign up for the Renewed Masculine Man, you make your way into our community, and you're there on September 1st, and you send me a message once you're in there and saying, hey, Sven, I'm here because I saw your YouTube video. I would like to put your name in a hat, and we'll do a drawing for this sharpener, which I think is about a $400 sharpener. And I'd be happy to send it to one winner, because I have another one of a different kind, and this is cool, and I think it's a great reflection of who we are and what we do. Now, you don't have to participate in that by signing up, but if you do, we would love to have you. So with that, I'll wish you a great weekend. I wish you the best in your experience as a man, whether you need reprofiling, sharpening, honing, stropping, etc. And if I can help you with that, or our community can help you with that, we would love to get to know you. I'll see you. Take care.